monthly Sustainable Rocky Hill Task Force meeting. A lot going on here today. Before we get started, do I have any motions?
Yes, I'd like to, if we could, put move number 6, the results of visioning exercise, before number 5. If we would do that, I make a motion, and then also add the chair report after number 2, the elected officials. That would be my motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second, discussion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Look at that, guys, I'm learning. All right.
Could I ask a point of order here?
Yeah.
If there's a reason for that, should we then maintain that order going forward? So I don't know. I mean, is that a better logical order to follow in our agenda? So we'll use that order going forward?
I think we could use that as the template, and as usual, like, we revise this thing before it goes out.
Okay.
So let's use that as the template.
To make a note of that.
Yeah, and I'd like to give an
Makes sense.
update to everybody
Okay.
in the future. So I believe then that the first item on the agenda is our elected officials report / discussion, and we're joined by Matt Lesser.
Hi. Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know, I'm Senator Matt Lesser. I represent Rocky Hill. I work with your secretary, Robert,
right.
at the Capitol, and Robert suggested I stop by and just say hi. I could give you a big update, but I'd rather have a discussion about ways that I can support your work in Rocky Hill more, and what we can do to work together to build a more sustainable Rocky Hill. So happy to have that conversation. I can just give you a couple of very quick updates. The legislature is finishing up work on our state budget. That will I'm on the Appropriations Committee, which oversees the state budget, and so we came up with a draft budget last week. Time flies when we're having fun. And we're still working on it. There are a number of changes that I'm still hoping to secure in it, and we'll be voting on it. We have to finish our work by June 6th. So that's where things are. There number of bills that are out there is winnowing down pretty fast to try to focus on the core essentials. And since bills are largely out of committee at this point, if I'm not on a committee, I'm not on the Environment Committee, I'm not on the Planning and Development Committee, which oversees municipalities. So I didn't really have a direct say in issues prior to this point that you guys may be most focused on. But now that they're out of committee, it gives me an opportunity to really weigh in on stuff. And I'll give you one example. The governor's climate bill, Senate Bill 1145, is now in front of the Appropriations Committee. So one of the things we have to decide is whether or not to fund his ambitious decision to create sector-wide reductions in emissions. So that's one question. Certainly there are a lot of issues around municipal aid and funding for trails, bikeways, complete streets, and I know that there's a lot of work happening on transportation right now. So, but I'll turn it over to you guys, see if there's stuff that you're focused on. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. I saw, and I'll be honest, I didn't read it all, but about housing is on the bill on funding housing. Is any of that towards affordable housing, or is that just how are they defining housing?
That's a good question. I think there is funding for there are a few different proposals out there. I'm not sure what you read, but there is for example, there's something called the Fair Share Bill that's out of housing. And I'm on the Housing Committee, so I'm actually the vice chair of the Housing Committee, that would set affordable housing targets for every community in the state. And I think Rocky Hill is either already there or pretty close in terms of what that bill sets out, but I can double check that. But there are an awful lot of municipalities that have not, are far behind their targets, and it's a question, as you can imagine, of different priorities in the legislature, and there are a lot of folks from towns in Fairfield County of both parties who are vehemently against that, and so.
Is it targets as well as like support to reach those targets, or is it just setting a level at which people should get to?
It's carrots and sticks,
Okay.
but anything that has a stick gets opposition from folks who don't want to donate. So,
Yeah.
and so I'm not sure where that's in. There is some funding in the state budget for housing, and so I have to go check to see how that's allocated. I don't know off the top. I don't work on that side of it.
I know one of our modules, I call them modules, there are 11 points
Yeah.
that to get your sustainable categories is affordable housing. And you probably know, we had a very challenging development proposal come forward and it did not pass for very valid reasons. So I don't think are we like halfway to our goal? You know the
We're
statistics.
5.13 right now.
Percent, and it's
Okay.
supposed to be what?
10%, yeah.
Okay, so we're halfway to our goal.
One of the other issues is obviously there's a separate issue I know locally about certain large landlords just not being responsible landlords, and so there is an effort as well to increase our enforcement tools about landlords that raise rent but don't provide basic services. and keeping-
Like the other issue here in Rocky Hill?
Yes, that's
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
All right.
everybody. No worries, welcome. You had mentioned that there may be grants available, or there's something going on around mobility and bike lanes?
Yeah. So we have a request in for a community connectivity grant to try to see what we can do in concert with our neighboring towns. So this is with Weathersfield, to see what we can do to improve connectivity using, I think it's particularly focused on the Silas-Dean corridor and what we can do around that, and having better sidewalks, having bike lanes would be great. And so I would refer, I've applied for it in support of the town, but I would definitely refer you to the town manager and maybe get your permission.
Any other questions?
Anything you want me to focus on, other than housing and
Connectivity.
connectivity?
Yeah. I mean, we have support, moderate support in town from the town management on bike lanes and such. It's just
Yeah.
tricky finding streets that are appropriate. You know Rocky Hill. I mean, I would say 75% of the streets you take your life in your hands if you want to bike on them.
Sure.
So even if you mark them and stencil them and whatever, it's not a guarantee. But even if we could get support for the paint, because stenciling is a whole thing, or the signs, or
One question I know that south of here, so in Middletown and Cromwell, people are looking at is there is a law about building a bike lane in a railroad's right of way, but in an active railroad's right of way. So there is a proposal looking at adding a bike lane to the Genesee and Wyoming Railroad that goes through Rocky Hill in Middletown and Cromwell. It would not shut down the railroad. It would be in sort of on the side of their right of way. So that conversation was happening there. I don't know if that's something that folks would be interested in
we
hearing.
have the railroad, but
Well-
geez, some of the side is very narrow.
Yeah.
And some very wide. In 1994, there was a proposal here
Mhm.
to do that.
Okay.
Didn't go anywhere, but that exists,
Okay.
a multi-use trail.
1994.
It was a while ago. I'm dating myself.
Yeah. I wasn't in the state senate in 1994.
Still exists. Past precedent. People wanted it before, they want it again. Good thing.
Oh, well, and the railroad was defunct at that point, wasn't it? It wasn't running?
Correct, right.
So I used to ride my horse along the railroad
Yeah.
bed.
Can't do that now.
No.
People still walk along that
The shoulder.
anyways,
Right.
even though it's semi-dangerous.
Well, we could maybe look at, push DOT in addition to looking at Middletown and Cromwell, maybe expanding that to Rocky Hill and Weathersfield, because it goes the whole way.
Yep.
And the Riverfront Recapture is doing a study right now in regards to connecting Hartford. So I believe they have Hartford and Weathersfield. Sadly, we did not jump in on that. We had the opportunity, but for some reason we missed out on it. I would have loved for us to connect, from Hartford. Of course, the Putnam Bridge is going to happen too, so we can connect to Glastonbury.
So this group is working on a bike routes plan to propose to the town saying, hey, we think these roads are a high priority. A number of residents have highlighted roads that they would like to see bike lanes on, and they're state roads. So if the town says, yes, this is something we want to work on, I think necessarily we'd have to work with the state.
Okay. Well, I've recently had sit-downs with the Newington delegation and the DOT commissioner, and the Middletown delegation and the DOT commissioner, talking about some of the big, transit priorities there, and including bike and pedestrian improvements. And we could definitely do that with Commissioner Ippolito when you get a series of asks. I'm happy to
Wonderful.
sit down with them and talk about all things Rocky Hill.
Another thing that we're doing, we're in the process of doing, is that I think the town spent $20,000 for a sidewalk study down Glastonbury Avenue. Glastonbury Avenue is a state road, so we may come to you to say, hey, a little help here.
Yeah.
To connect the community center, town campus, Kelson Row to the river.
Okay. Any other questions or
Anything happening
priorities?
around the dump? Anything happening around the dump? Is that
Quiet.
Still, yeah, it's quiet, but we're hoping for some activity soon. It's been a long time.
Their permit ran out.
Can
The owner's
you
permit.
flesh that out for those of us that don't know what you're talking about?
Well, there was a stewardship.
We're referring to it as a dump. Is it a functioning dump?
Oh, yeah.
Where?
Yeah.
Right?
No,
No,
are you
no, the
talking
transfer
about
station.
down by the
Functioning,
ferry?
the transfer station. Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the.
No, I'm talking about the dump over by
Ferry Park?
Ferry Park.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
former
like-
dump. Former.
Former dump,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not functioning.
No, but
Yeah,
but
but
they were
that-
hoping to they were hoping to restart it.
You would know, but they've been through a number of lawyers have had medical issues and everything, then the owner, there's just been one issue after another where it just keeps getting stalled.
And I haven't heard any new activity in a year. So,
year,
yeah, I haven't heard of anything new. So.
I haven't heard anything, so that's why I was wondering if I missed anything.
No, nothing has been going on.
You could take a nap and it'll be there.
Well, I didn't think it was gone, but I was wondering if there had been any
It's
development.
just, it's in
Yeah.
limbo.
So this group, as I had mentioned before, the meeting started, like we've just finished a big list of priorities that we want to tackle in the coming year. And if there are no additional points that people want to raise now, I think our next steps are to say like, okay, we'll come back and say this is our list of priorities, and then touch base with you regularly about like whether the state can help us.
I will also, the other thing that I didn't mention is there's been a big battle back and forth over the governor's the bill around waste management, and I know that the town is anxious to access your pilot grant
Yes.
for the composting program. We have one that's functioning in Middletown. I live in the service area. It works well, and it makes sense to.
Are you doing the 2 bags, Matt?
Yeah.
And it's working?
It is. I think it could be simplified. I think it's too complicated as is. I mean, I understand it and I do it, but I think there are a lot of folks in the neighborhood. They haven't done enough public education around it, and I think it's also the people who are doing it it's working well, but a large number of people I think in the service area are not.
Did people have a hard time kind of, shifting their paradigms to getting into the rhythm of doing the 2 bags?
I think that. I also just think that just people don't know what's going on because there hasn't been. It's in a low income area, and there are a lot of folks who don't speak English, and bags just appeared on people's front porches, and I did a Facebook Live, but it's not, there hasn't been a real effort to explain to people like, hey, you got to change how people have done garbage their entire life, and now we got to do things a little bit differently.
Matt, where do you think the education should come from? The town management? The DEEP? Well, DEEP wants us to go through, but who partners with me and my house to help me understand this? What ideally, if you could say this is how we'd make it better?
Well, I think town management and then community organizations, so the trusted community messengers, whether it's a faith organization or a neighborhood organization, or whenever anybody's doing something at or a local school, but you have existing relationships, use those to reach out to people, and I just think they haven't.
Can I step in? Trump mentioned 1994. Can anyone remember the recycling rollout in this country? I mean, was there anyone remember a specific
Just
message that came out to our homes to recycle? It's like, I remember a sister-in-law saying, I'm not recycling. 3 years later, of course she is. She's not blindly ignorant. So that message came from, I think, central government agencies.
And of course, we can yeah, it'll be a lot of different voices.
Yeah, and I think Rocky Hill is very different from the north end of Middletown and different from Hartford, New England. So like I think each community's gonna ideally do a slightly different way of doing outreach. But you can't just like leave bags on people's front porch. You have to sell the program and tell people how they're gonna work, and it's gonna take a little bit of time.
So I will say, when Kristen Brown, she was a consultant for DEEP, when she was involved and we had a number of discussions with her, she actually said DEEP was going to provide or was going to hire a marketing company. So evidently that's not happening.
They've done a little bit.
Done
I have noted they put a little how-to explainer on people's trash cans, so I see them occasionally when they go a little, but it's just not been enough.
Not enough. Yeah, it's going to take more.
Yeah. But you're just changing the way people operate, and not everybody is on a Thursday evening, comes out to Rocky Hill Town Hall to learn about recycling. You guys, you all are
They're missing
special,
something.
but not everybody is doing that. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you sticking around or coming to visit. I think the next step here is we've got a couple of other items on the agenda. You're welcome to say.
I got to run to a
Okay.
thing, but it's great to see everybody, and just stay in touch. If there's some ways that I can be helpful to support your work, I'm happy to do it. Just let me know, and if there are things that I'm not paying attention to that I should, that are in Hartford, definitely let me know.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again
Good to see everybody.
for stopping
Thanks,
by.
Matt.
Okay. Next order of business. So the chair update. So I'd like to really briefly run through some of the activities that I'm aware of that this task force has done, and then organize them under the relevant sustainable CT action. So that hopefully, as we're reporting to sustainable CT the things that we're doing, becomes a little bit easier. So as a result, things are going to be a little bit chronologically out of order, but hopefully this format works. After I run through, if I'm missing anything, if other task force members have done things, I'd love for y'all to speak up. So since the last meeting, a general topic on 416, Ed, Alan, and I, we all ended that meeting. One being, I got access to the portal, which is lovely. And two, they told us a little bit about their community match fund, which is their program where if you basically run a crowdfunding campaign, if you are able to raise funds for an issue that fits within the Sustainable CT Action Framework, then they will match those funds up to a certain amount. So it basically doubles your fundraiser, which is very useful, and hopefully we could use that for some of our own activities. So that's a general update. I'll go through some other actions here, and again, I'll be fairly brief with the expectation that we can go into more detail in a future section. So 1.3, develop and adopt a statement on equity. So last night, I, Sandy, and other members of the town went to the Commission on Inclusion and Innovation, and I spoke in favor of a statement on equity. And I spoke in my personal capacity. This is something that I do think falls within the purview of Sustainable Rocky Hill, because 1.3, adopting a statement on equity, that is a thing that not only is part of the framework, but required for gold. And if you haven't looked at that statement recently, it's your nighttime reading, it is basically acknowledging that structural reforms are necessary to get to this more perfect union of equity, that the town commits to going forward and addressing inequity where it finds it, and then listing out a plan that it's going to follow in order to reach that goal. So pretty stock standard stuff. I talked to Dana McGee, and she thinks that this should be feasible, and we have examples that we can look at from Glastonbury and Simsbury and whatnot. So there are some places we can go. 3.2, enhance pollinator pathways. On the 18th, the Rocky Hill Book Club, the Sustainable Rocky Hill Book Club, met, and we made little signs that say, "We are the Ark." This is coming out of the book, We Are the Ark. Or I'm sorry, this is an Ark. The idea being that if you're planting a pollinator garden or rewilding your house in some way, or your yard in some way, you can have a little sign to inform your neighbors that you haven't gone crazy, you are intentionally trying to return land to a more natural setting.
Do you want to do the ARC acronym for the record? Because it's not clear to everybody.
Acts of restorative kindness.
ARK, yeah.
Yes.
So people might get confused with Noah's Ark. Or
Yep, different arc.
You're welcome.
Do you want any comments
saying
on
that like it's
any of
common
these
knowledge.
subjects?
Yeah, please, comments or questions? Or
Sure.
fun.
You had mentioned signs. Just know that we in our last bronze certification, we became a pollinator pathway town.
Yes.
For everybody, if you're not aware. And you can sign up for your house, and you can buy a medallion that says pollinator pathway.
With a little
on it.
butterfly, right?
Right, and
Yeah.
we have that on the food pantry garden right now.
That's great, and we should promote that. We should share that on our various different channels.
It has one, right? You have a sign
Yes.
on your property.
6.5, promote public transit and other mobility strategies. So on the 13th, Ed, Alan, myself, and Walk Bike Rocky Hill member Paul DeTillo met to talk about basically a synthesis of our learning sessions that we've been doing around town, where we plop down a map and say, where do you think we should have bike lanes? And if we have time, this is something that I'd like to share with the group, because this is something that we hope to present to Kim Ritchie, the town planner, and other people who would be responsible for taking it on. Reduce and compost organic waste. So on the 17th, a number of us met with recycling coordinator Joe Lentini. We shared our visits to the Blue Earth Composting Center and to Quantum. We learned that the town is still drafting a plan to try to meet the DEEP grant, and that will be released soon. And we kind of brainstormed, okay, what can we do how can we partner together to reduce organic waste? And agreed that education is a major thing for it. We can reduce at the point of generation and also help people to understand, hey, composting is a way that you can get rid of this food waste. He wants us to focus on recycling as well, which is very much within the sustainable CT framework. And
I'm sorry, maybe this is on your list, but to the composting point, also the meeting with the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee?
I think that was
Or was that reported?
that was
last time?
before.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Everything mushes together
it-
in my head.
This is why I made a list, because I wasn't sure what happened when. And then finally, number 10, which is one that I don't think I've given an update on before, optimal health and wellness opportunities. So Ed attended the Health and Wellness Fair yesterday and represented us for all the actions under Action 10, which are, clean air, preparing for extreme heat. I forget the other actions.
Where was that?
Promote community growing spaces, conduct health impact assessments.
Yes. Section 10.
Support.
Where was the
The
fair?
wellness fair was at the community center. Yeah. We were there along with the Connecticut Gambling Association, and we had good company, and the library and others as well. Okay, so these were the updates that I had relevant to the sustainable CT framework. Does anybody else have things that they want to share?
I guess, yeah, I just have wrote down 4 points just to share. Just like through this job, I've had access to the resources that they try to share to the state elected officials. So within the past 2 weeks, 1 week and the next, I went to the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators. They had a webinar on first wildlife protection, endangered species. That's not necessarily applicable because they were just talking about broad, like statewide legislation. They did have one on waste management where we had presentations from Blue Earth. That's an anaerobic facility, right, Blue Earth?
They're basically a hauler that works with anaerobic facilities. Yeah.
And they had Bright Feeds too, which I know is a place in Berlin.
Bright Feeds.
Yeah, they take compost and they turn it into animal feed.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
And they're in Berlin, so I thought that was cool. They're close.
That's awesome.
And then I've been getting a bunch of people's, like some of the bills. I got everyone's message about SB4. I think I replied to you and Mara as well. I don't know if anyone else here has written it. If you do, I'll reply. Other big ones are rodenticides and neonicotinoids, so pesticide use. That's one of the bans they're considering. 963, 964, I think, are the bills. There's some stuff on like small gas-powered engines that we've been catching a lot of flack for because people want to use their carbon or combustion typical small engine mowers. So that's the bill side of things. I've had meetings with a number of people for different things. I met with the Yale students for climate dividends. We didn't talk about climate dividends because there's no climate dividend bill this time. So we did talk about, oh geez, I'm forgetting, but one of the bills, I forgot. It would be like funding dispersed in municipalities for various environmental programs. That was what the students came in and wanted to talk about.
Right.
And then I just wrote Riverfront Recapture, just because you talked about it connecting Hartford to Wethersfield. I rode for Riverfront and I worked security there for a little bit during college. But I know their assistant director quite well, and we talked about their building the seawall along the Riverfront Trail. So if you ever want to get in contact with them, I could perhaps.
Just on that subject, someone came and spoke at Old Wethersfield, Heirloom Market, Bike, Wethersfield, Bike, Rocky Hill, Fusion meeting. And I don't know, Kevin from Wethersfield invited her, but her name's escaping me. I haven't written down, I'm scrambling to find it. But I think that's an extraordinary resource.
Yeah,
It really, really touches on so many different things that and it's great that you have some institutional knowledge of it.
Oh yeah, no, the people at Riverfront are really great people. So yeah, that's all I got. I just wanted to share that.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, any other updates?
There, I don't know if this is the correct place, but I'm wondering how, if we're keeping track of points right now. Are we, like you mentioned a lot of things. You just mentioned a lot of
Well,
things.
where's the recording, right?
I'm sorry?
We have the recording. Because I go back and I'll take we'll get each.
No, I mean points for.
Oh, points of order, like we're not motioning or seconding.
No. Points for Connecticut Sustainable CT.
Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No.
So I'm just looking here. So I didn't realize that now they have gold. Silver is 500 points, right? So we already achieved bronze. So we need to get now 300 points. Now I could vouch for some points right here already on some of the things that I've done, but as you do, I don't know. That's what my question is. Are you at a point now where either of you where we're creating a list? That, we did this. That's 10. This is 15. 5.
Yeah. So I think we still need to figure out the procedure now that we have access. But my understanding of how this works is there's points at which our application is reviewed. There was just a deadline for the spring that in early April. And then the next time around is in August. So our goal should be, I think, to submit a bunch of actions to the platform by August. And so, yeah, that's partly going back in history since, I think, last August when we submitted.
Since the bronze?
Mm-hmm.
This one we got, the last one was last August.
Yeah. So, we've been doing a pretty good job of making updates on Facebook and I see people dropping files in the drive. So the documentation should be there.
Is that so? That's something that's kept track on the portal?
I've looked at it. It's not as robust as I imagined it would be. It's literally you upload a file and then you say, I think it is relevant to this action.
Right.
So I had a phone call yesterday with someone from Sustainable CT, and they said that this summer they would have fellows available to help us review our applications.
Great. Makes sense.
Which would be great because we could give them a list of things that we know we've done and some other things that have been happening around us in other groups, so we might be able to give them a list and see if there's anywhere else that they can apply things we haven't thought of.
And can we, submit, we don't have to wait till August, we can start
No,
submitting
it
now,
should be
so that
rolling.
would be great, so
Yes.
that by the time we get to August,
Yeah.
okay.
And so I think that's a pretty good segue to the next topic, which is who are the people doing work and how are we going to organize ourselves? So with everybody's permission, we'll go on into, public comments first, and then we'll go on to that. Are there any comments from the public? Hi, public.
I speak for all the residents of Rocky Hill.
Just on the topic of
I
public,
wish.
I know that Anita is planning on coming here. She said 6:15, so that's about 20 minutes.
Okay.
So
Well-
if there's some retroactive public comment, maybe.
My mom should be stopping by too.
Okay.
And I had a
All are
question
welcome.
when you said bright something in Berlin.
Bright
Feeds.
Feeds.
Okay. Yeah.
I think their website is just brightfeeds.com.
Yeah.
But if that's not the right one, then maybe I'm wrong.
No, I appreciate that. I really didn't have anything specific in mind, but I didn't know if we were going to talk at all about, the idea of the fundraising opportunity to start a pilot if the town isn't going to, and I don't know.
Yeah, I think, well, I know that we were planning to get some updates on a couple of things about the website and access to Sustainable CT platform, which we've already covered a little bit. Maybe, Jason, you could say what conversations, if any, have been had with the town manager? Because you and I had talked about that.
After the meeting with Joe Lentini, he had presented his early concept to the town manager, and they agreed to go back to the drawing board. So I think there's a revision happening right now that hasn't been solidified yet.
Okay.
It's been maybe a week or so that they've been working on it. So I think they wanted to expand the scope of their original pilot area, make it much larger. So it might actually be a town-wide pilot as opposed to just a small region of town. What was the rest of the question? I'm sorry.
So, yeah, the idea is that, like, multiple things can go on in parallel.
Yeah.
Obviously, we get points for the town handling organic food waste from a municipal level. There was an idea that residents could still independently go to Blue Earth Compost. So Mary Beth reached out to Sam, I forget his name, King, and he told us that, like, at the moment, Rocky Hill is not at the threshold for them to start serving residents, but the threshold is fairly low. It's actually 50 houses, he says.
And I don't know if he's doing that just for us because we've been so, he knows how much we wanted to get started on this.
He assumes that we will have a lot of waste.
Yeah, and he even said that if we were to get like I think they generally for private citizens have a 4-pound container that they would collect every other week at the curb for a minimum of 50 residents, and it would cost $17 a month for
Yeah.
them to come twice a month.
So I think that this is sort of a yes-and scenario. Like, obviously, citizens can do whatever they want. They can go to whatever company they want to handle their organic waste.
Because we don't know, like, whatever the town is doing, and whether that's going to come out of the grant money, or, because otherwise it's coming out of the town budget. We don't know, I don't know anything about that, but I would hate to see that they're going to create a full town-wide system to pick up things curbside on a weekly basis. That's not going to be.
There's no demand, right?
That's not going to cost zero. They'd have to buy trucks that do it. You'd have to truck it to an anaerobic digester. They'd have to get pails. They'd have to. So I'm hoping that that's not, if that applies to, and it probably wouldn't apply to the grant unless, because it's not going to use the orange and the green bags.
Right.
It's not going to. So as far as we know, we can't.
Right. I mean, this would
stray
be
from that.
This would be an entirely citizen-run thing. Now, I
Meanwhile,
assume
they're
that
cutting senior citizen lunches.
So,
So.
my assumption is, like, we do not know the plan that the town has yet. Anything moves forward. I assume that if a plan does go forward that addresses municipal food scraps, that would be the point in which people could re-examine their contract. Maybe the town would assume the people who are already using the service that they select. It's hard to know at this point. So,
But rather than sit still, because you guys are the sustainable committee,
yeah.
to do something of, coming from this group, whether it be raising money to help make it happen, or even just communicating what is possible as a private pilot.
Yeah.
Because that's how the business Blue Earth started. It's a private, they have private citizens who pay them, just like a lot of towns. The towns don't pay for their trash pickup at all.
Yeah.
So even trash pickup is paid privately. We fortunately do still have municipal garbage pickup.
So I appreciate Mary Beth coming to this meeting. I think this would fall into the purview of a working group around composting. So, and if I may segue into that, because I think the two are related, here's how I think this issue would move forward, and any other issue that this group wants to tackle. Right? Now, you all remember that in late March, we had a visioning session where a bunch of people came in, threw sticky notes up on the wall, and said, like, this is my vision for a sustainable Rocky Hill. These are the actions I want to take. I took those action statements and the people who said, I want to be involved in this, and put them and basically grouped them under the relevant sustainable CT task or action statement. So people who say that they want to increase the amount of composting or do community composting, neighborhood composting, or educate people on how composting works. All of that falls under, I think, 9.3, reduce organic waste. So I know not everybody here has a laptop. I wonder if it would be possible for us to share on this. But did you all receive the Google Doc with the working group? Here, Sandy, I will share with you, and maybe we can all share around it.
I'm good. I have it on my phone.
You have it on your phone. Excellent. Okay, so I am looking right now at the SRH 2023 Action Plan and Working Groups document. This can be made into a public document if it isn't already on our planning website. So what I've done is broken each of these actions into the relevant sustainable CT action, and then I've made a category called Working Group. Now, these are the people from the Sustainability Task Force who said that they want to be involved in these sorts of decisions. And then there are actions. So for example, Saima, you and I spoke, and you said that you would be interested in being involved on any actions to do with the Statement on Equity, 1.3. So Saima and I are two people, and that is a below quorum working group. So it's possible for us to meet and chat and whatnot.
But
Also,
excuse me, you have to have a quorum for a working group?
you don't. In
Okay.
fact, you
You said
should
below
not.
quorum, so
It's
I thought-
below quorum for the task force itself.
3 or fewer, so he's saying it's a good thing.
Right.
So when you say quorum, it makes me think it's required. So leave the word quorum out of it.
Right. The reason I mentioned quorum
Okay.
is if we meet in a quorum, if a certain number of task force members meet, then that is something that needs to be a public meeting, and that there are rules around that in terms of, like, we need to publish it and we need to invite people, right? Yeah.
A little too hard.
Therefore, in order to sustain our ability to work effectively, we are doing working groups, and that is under the quorum. So the
Less
quorum is
than.
4. We have to have working groups
Oh, I
of.
see what you're thinking. Falls under
Under
quorum.
the auspices of quorum.
I see. Got it. Yes. Okay. Thank you for
Less than
clarifying.
quorum, so
Quorum.
we're safe.
Where's my-
Less than quorum. So the idea is that if a working group, I want to go through this list and say, okay, well, who wants to be involved in XYZ actions from the task force? We also, many members of the public said that they want to be involved in these tasks as well. And our goal is to say, okay, well, there's the task force members, and then there's the broader public whom they will engage in these activities, right? And you can have as many members of the public engage in these things as you want. It's ideal. So I would like to go through this document, name the actions, name the members of the working group, and confirm that these are the right people, right?
Before you start, I love working group because I think it replaces committee.
Yeah.
Right? Committee seems to be placated, like working group really defines.
With the
what's
emphasis
gonna
on
be done
working,
here.
yeah. One thing I will note is there are some issues here, composting included, that have many of our names on this. This is more than 4. And so I think at that point you say, well, for certain actions, we're going to divide out into teams, right?
Point of order, if we have a working group of 6, that is only a working group, it's not part of the committee, so it's not subject to FOI.
But no, it is.
It is.
FOI,
If
because
it's-
at that
Well,
point,
unless at least
you have
3
a
of them
quorum
are
to
in the
conduct.
public.
Are public.
Your
Yeah,
public
yeah.
meeting.
We wouldn't want a working group of 6
committee members.
Committee members.
We would,
Right.
That
if
would
they were public.
So
like that.
let me give you an example.
However, now remember, this is only on paper. Doesn't mean that these 6 people are meeting all the time.
Correct.
So if that working group of 6 does have, a quorum, you just need to realize that you're going to be meeting in less than a quorum.
So you need, if the group of 6, if there must be 6, then we need to follow the rules around public meetings.
Like social distancing.
And that's fine, as long as we announce it,
Reporting it.
send it to Jason, and it goes on the town website. That's fine. But if you want to coordinate, beyond those public meetings,
2 of us and 5 of the public.
right? So here's an example of where this might be relevant. 6.5, promote public transit and other mobility strategies. The people who attended this visioning session who said that they wanted to be involved, as far as I could capture, were Alan, Ed, Sandy, and Derek. And then there was a community member, Paul Carbook, who said that he wanted to be involved. And there are a number of actions involved. Now that's 4 people, and 4 meets the requirements for a quorum. So I would propose that this group decide, all right, well, for actions relating to passing complete streets, either we meet in public or the working group is going to be these 3 people, right? Maybe it'll be Alan, Ed, and Sandy. Or,
I'm sorry to keep you interrupting,
No,
but
no,
I
no.
think what he said is right. This is 4 people on paper, but if we are going to have a communication in any form, as long as it's only 3, then I think we're in compliance.
as long as it's only 3.
But then if I'm sick that day, Sandy's gonna have the next meeting, and then there's still 3.
As long as
It's
it's
like a
3.
rotation.
I'm just saying, like, the reason I am stressing this,
So
and
you're
I'm
going to
glad
hang
that we're
up on
discussing
me
this.
because I'm the 4th.
Right.
Why it's
Somebody
Earth
falls
Day,
silent
I
and
can't
walks away.
attend. Right, that's it.
Yeah,
It's
that's fine.
3.
I'm just saying it'll be the responsibility of the people in the group to self-organize and say, like, notice it. Like, we're going to be 4 people here. Like,
Which doesn't apply, by the way, if you all run into each other at the diner.
no. But if you are,
You can't be present. It's
No,
just
it
that you can't
does.
have-
If
discuss
you-
policy.
but if you're
4 of you
talking
run-
about,
Yeah, if the 4 of you run into each other at a diner and talk business.
And talk
about the
business.
It's a
town,
meeting.
That's the
You're now
difference.
having a public
Yeah,
meeting,
correct.
and you haven't advertised.
So,
it.
Yeah.
so I'm hearing
That's
that
why
there-
he's trying to stay below that threshold.
right.
Okay, so maybe it is better to cap it at 3. That way we don't have to play the stance.
that's sort of what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
And so-
we meet as a group monthly, right? And if we want to coordinate saying, no, this is a big enough issue, 6.5, all actions in this are something that as a working group we want to do, then let's make it a public meeting. But we have to play by the rules.
I
You
think
could
we.
pl- oh, sorry, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I think we'd be cutting off our noses to spite our face if we say, can only have 3.
I kind of agree.
Have 5
I'm in the
and tell
middle.
Jason. Post it somewhere. I don't think anybody's going to really care
have
and rush
special
to
meetings
meet
for-
with
Could
us.
we email each other
but
with
this-
5?
Let me finish, please.
Okay, sorry.
The strength of us working as 5 people versus a limited 3 and you can't attend is ridiculous,
I kind of get it, yeah.
right?
But would be the most vigilant task force the town has ever seen, because I guarantee there are other groups that are not doing this.
All right.
As long as we know we are doing it, and we're saying, Jason, the 4 of us are gonna hear, or you're
Jason says-
CC'd in an email, so maybe we could have more consultation on how.
I see hands going up, so I'll go to Robert and then.
Is there anything that would preclude us from having like internal working group reports so that we can keep it to like a de facto 3 people, but then they could report back to everybody at large on like a non.
You can do that, because those reports could be found out through the Freedom of Information Act
Yeah.
requests.
So maybe that
Yeah,
would
you
be
could CC me on those communications, and then it's in our record-keeping system, so it can be accessed as needed. And plus, any of the results that you guys come up with, or questions that you need, you can always bring those back to a regular meeting. We can add them to the agenda when necessary for future meetings.
Mhm.
And then also, if necessary, you need to get the whole body together to discuss something. We could schedule special meetings. It doesn't necessarily have to be at a regular meeting that we conduct a certain activity.
Yeah.
I just need advance warning so I can have the proper channels in place to be able to conduct that public meeting. So I have to advertise in advance, I need to post an agenda and make sure it's reported in all the proper places. And then if we want to have a recording, I have to make sure that I have someone available who can handle the AV side of these meetings as well. So advance warning is always good.
do I see your hand up over there, Hari?
Yeah, so even when they actually meet, it should be like in a public setting?
No, not necessarily.
It just needs to be, the public needs to be notified within a certain period of time in advance
Yeah.
and be able to attend.
And
So we could meet in Sandy's backyard as long as the
Probably
public
As
is
long as he
notified.
wants to come with the camera.
Right, that's the other issue too.
The cameras aren't necessary.
So can I add something to this? One of the things about working groups are only, I think, as good as somebody who is going to be the leader of a working group. It's great that we're going to have a working group, say if we three are on a working group, but eventually somebody has to take the lead. So as we're doing this, I would also suggest that we need to think about that as well.
But to that point, that's why I just think if we did the reports, that way we could have smaller groups, but we always keep everyone in the loop. The
Yeah.
public could always access it, and that way, if someone has to, not like minutes, but someone has to do an abstract or a summary of what you talked about, that would be the leader, presumably, or
Yeah.
would establish that.
And I would
responsibility.
expect these groups to designate a coordinator, right? Like, we need to have these notes.
It could be based on skill set though, because not everybody, somebody could lead in one capacity but not in another.
Yeah.
Something I call horizontal leadership is where everybody kind of has a say, and if it's 3 people, then you can sort of go to a majority. Like, how about this decision? No, I don't have bandwidth.
However it works within these working groups, like as long as the work gets done, I'm not asking for hierarchy here. I'm asking for us as a group to communicate with each other, and in fact, not to have hierarchy, so that it isn't just like, one person directing activities. We're all interested in different things and passionate about different things. We should be able to organize and work with each other on
I
different
don't know if
things.
this was segueing back to like my public comment, but if it were, I was just gonna say that it's like subcommittees.
Yeah.
And subcommittees on other organizations I'm in, like, we report back, we can email each other, or we can show up at the next regular meeting and report on it. And it's to get more stuff done. It's not so that you can all do everything, because you never be able to schedule a meeting because you're too busy. So you have smaller groups so that you can do stuff on your own and make a quick call. Can 3 of us get together? Like, do you have time? It's hard to do it when you're doing it with 6 people and their schedules.
So let me say this, like, we can figure this out. We can figure out the how of it. This is the what. Like, these are the actions that I think we want to try to take over the coming year. And one thing I want to stress is that we can do more, right? It's not like, well, that wasn't in the plan, right? Like, we can raise other issues. The point is that, like, we identified that this matters to us, and we identified that different parts of our group are focused on different issues. So this is a plan to move forward and try to address these issues. There's no timeline. There's not going to be a penalty if people don't get every single action. This is way too much for all of us to do in a year, But it is the list of things that we said that we wanted to pursue, right?
Derek, I have
Aretha, real quick, and then we have 10 minutes, so I'd like us to
10 minutes? What do you
yes, this meeting's done at 6:30.
mean? Why?
Doesn't have to be.
Well,
I have no objection. If you're looking at me, I'm pretty comfortable.
I need a-
You have to go. That's
okay, well,
Then Aretha would be the vice chair. That's-
yeah, I mean, I would have to pass it over to Aretha then, because I made a commitment to my wife to leave at 6:30, which is what this is scheduled for.
We're just following an agenda, there's probably, and there's minutes, so we'd love to have you.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So can we, it's all a great discussion, but can we, just nail the working groups?
Yeah.
Those categories that.
So I'd like to go through this and then ask. All right. Section 1.3, Statement on Equity. The actions under this were advocate for a statement on equity, education on Ramadan in the libraries at the appropriate time, and perhaps to advocate for a school holiday for Eid to align with other religious holidays the town has passed. Currently, the working group is listed as Derek and Sima. Would anybody else like to be involved in this? Robert?
Got an agenda. Senator Lesser was sent me a chair, and he's just occupied it.
Very good. 3.12, enhance pollinator pathways. These actions include community events for planting native flowers and shrubs, advocating for No Mow May, which would technically start in 4 days, for residences and the town. Currently, the people who have said that they are interested in actions around 3.12 are Alan, Ed, and Derek, with community members of Stephanie, Addison, Anita, and Melina. Does anybody else want to be on this? Simon?
For me, it's become No Mow April.
Right, why limit it to
People are
May?
mowing already.
No, I was gonna say, because we haven't mowed our lawn yet, and I know my parents are gonna ask me to, so now I can say.
I'd be like, I'm taking a stand.
Where can people suggest getting, it's helpful to have a sign?
Yes, can I put a hold on that and then
Yeah, if someone
run through this?
does that. He's on an agenda.
Sorry.
But all right.
6.1, implement complete streets. So this is actually a dedicated, it is a standalone action within Sustainable CT. The people who have said that they are interested in this are Alan, Ed, Sandy, and Derek. And the Plan Implementation Committee has already proposed this to the town council. It's on the agenda eventually. Who wants to be involved in this? Okay.
I'm on PIC, but I'm on that.
You're on this,
already.
yep. Promote public transit and other mobility strategies, 6.5. There are a lot of actions down here. Passing complete streets, it's relevant. Establish robust bike lanes, organize group bike rides, connect the city with sidewalks, improve the quality and frequency of public transit, advocate for the continuing free fare for buses, advocate for a trolley, easy pass expansion.
I'm sorry, Charlie.
I think the recreational, we probably can't drill down into these right now, but I don't think, I thought the same thing about a trolley, but I do think there's something of
Yeah.
it hits the points unlike, not unlike
Yeah.
access arrival.
Tourism trolley.
And
Still gets you to
again, we
what
don't
it's
have to do all of these actions, but these all fall under 6.5. So anybody aside from Ed, Alan, Sandy, and Derek want to be involved in? Okay. 7.4, increase use of municipal energy, or renewable energy in municipal buildings. This was suggested by Jennifer. I think this is an awesome idea, but currently I am the only one. Anybody want to get involved in that?
Would that also include like weatherization, or are we just thinking like energy use generation, as you know what I mean?
There's also community energy. That's 7.7. There's 7 is very much dedicated to this sort of thing.
Community energy.
Sure.
I'd like to put a community member, and I know he's very much into this. If you just put Tim Honan down.
Tim.
And then I will, either you or I can connect with him.
Right, I remember Tim.
Yeah, he's
You
got a
came
lot of
from
experience.
early meetings.
Yes.
Very good.
Can you also add me?
Of
And
course.
Anita as well.
Can you have me to 7.4 too? Is that okay?
Sorry?
Can I be on 7.4?
Yeah, of course.
For me? Oh, yeah.
All right. And then, I'm sorry, Haritha, did you want 7.7 as well, community energy? So passing rules, encouraging solar.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. 9.4, reduce and compost organic waste. Nobody's really interested in this issue.
I don't see Mary Beth on there.
I'm gonna be the community person.
Oh, of
Come
course,
on.
I'm putting her
Get it.
first. How did that
Yeah,
post-it note
definitely
fall
put her
off?
first.
I'm on that one.
Yep. Task force members, Alan, Ed, Derek, Haritha, and Saima. This is one of the biggies, so we'll have to
Sandy's
make our way through.
been on it too, but yeah, I mean, we're on almost every one. here.
You know, I'm going to focus like on the 6s,
Mhm.
because this has more than enough. I mean, you'll be meeting,
there you
you know, posting meetings, and you've got to do all this really legit, so.
Can we
Forever.
bisect it? Maybe this is a silly idea, but between like community education for composting and then like the actual policy for composting. Just
I think that would be a great way to take these actions and split them.
Yes. split
Absolutely.
them by 2 members
Yeah.
taking the lead on something.
Almost feeds right into Agenda 7A.
Oh my gosh, yes. And then there's just a couple more here. 10.1, encourage an equitable and just food system. Simplify access to food at the food pantry. Ed and I both put our names down for this.
Simplify the actions. Is it hard now?
It,
Yes.
reportedly, yes.
Yeah, you
They're-
can take me off
Of
of that one,
course.
man. I need to slim down a little bit.
Take
Okay.
him off or on.
Okay, Anita's on.
Everything community, my research is going to be in community agriculture, so anything community agriculture.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Robert and Sima, you said you as well. Great. There were a bunch. Oh,
Same.
okay. 10.4. Develop and promote community growing spaces. So that involves actions such as encourage growing gardens and sharing food with neighbors, create a community garden at the New Britain Open Space.
Does everyone we're saying that in place of Straska?
You mean Straska Farm?
That is
New
the
Britain Avenue.
We
the
don't
king
want
is
our-
dead and long live the king.
Well, we don't want our
Yeah.
state center calling things dump, and we don't
Right.
want you to call something.
I believe
What is
New
that?
Britain Open Space is the new technical name for it, but yes,
What?
AKA
Wait,
Strauska.
no.
I'm just going off of a map. I'm looking at a map. I could be wrong. I'm not naming it right now. Strauska. Let's call it Strauska.
Former Strassy
Former.
Farm.
Former
Thank you.
Strauska.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Got it.
Okay,
Yes.
because it said New Britain, I was like, that's not.
The Rocky Hill
I know.
Community Farm.
Well, an avenue at least, right? I mean, just for
I
clarity.
apologize.
Yes. it's
No
really-
worries, Derek.
And they need a compost program.
Task Force, Haritha, Sima, Derek, and Robert, and then community members. I'm sure I'm adding Anita to this. Yes?
You absolutely are.
Avenue open space.
There it is,
Yeah.
right, but that's why he's in
Yeah.
charge of these
I would
things.
even argue New Road Open Space.
Okay. It's not the name.
That is a new road, right?
Yeah,
New
it's
road,
really
right?
access.
I'm just going off of OpenStreetMap, guys. Anita.
Oh,
I know how to spell. Okay. Anybody else want to be? Go
Well, I mean, I'm involved in the farmland acquisition committee, which is Straska Development.
Yeah.
So put me on there. What is that? What number is that?
You're the one that's
That
got all the bike lanes.
is 10.4.
On New Road.
Sandy.
She doesn't know yet.
Okay. 11.1, implement an affordable housing plan. Now,
Implement? Don't you have to create it first?
now the plan was passed in December, right, Ed? So this
Right.
is
So you have 11.1 is to create an affordable housing committee. Point 2 is create and expand, maintain housing data. So, yeah, the plan was created. We had 30 points for that. That's in
Right.
the bag already.
okay. Yeah, I see, and that's what 11.2
So you have
below is
11
grow and grow sustainable and affordable.
Yeah, there's
options.
other items, yeah.
All right. So this is kind of already addressed in terms of getting points through the framework. 11.1 is.
11 point, hold on a second. Yeah, yes, creating an affordable housing plan is 11.3. Creating an affordable housing committee is 11.1.
Oh, excuse me. you're
Creating
right.
and expanding create, expand, and maintain housing is 11.1.2. So
11.1.
you
implement-
can maybe just put it in a general sense. And
Yeah,
then
could we
go
make
back
that
and-
like 11 healthy, efficient, and diverse housing and all the sub
so.
tasks associated?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you could add those later.
Okay. Working group currently is Ed and Derek.
Right.
Anybody else?
Charlie Wisnowski as a community member.
Charlie.
Yes.
Okay, so this
Osama.
Yes,
Simon?
I will go back to the 10.1.
10.1.
I don't know if we can add that, we talked about it in the beginning, that providing the halal lunch to the kids in schools, can that fall into that?
We can certainly look into it.
Just food system seems like
That seems, yeah.
So, what I'd like to do is say, like, if possible, can we vote on this to say it is our plan, as in this is our understanding of what we, the groups of people who are going to be pursuing these actions, and then we can say we still have to figure out the how and the methods by which we're talking, and we can of course add to this. We don't have to do everything on this list. This is just the groups of people working on causes. Are people comfortable
Yeah.
in?
I'll make a motion to accept the working groups as outlined on the April 27th, what is today?
27th.
27th meeting of the Sustainable Rocky Hill Task Force.
I don't know what the terminology be, what is it referring to this document here?
Yeah, the action plan and working group stuff.
Okay,
I'll
so
I'll
to-
second that.
Okay, second. Discussion?
I would like to add that it's, as you suggested, that I believe this is a living document and that we can revise this as we go along. So I don't know if we could add that
So that's a friendly amendment
friendly amendment to that.
to the motion.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do I handle that? Second and then discussion
No,
as well?
that's-
All in favor?
That's part of
The motioner has to accept it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great.
And then you just all in favor of saying.
Well, discussion.
Discussion? Any other? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Just out of courtesy, I think any opposed, that way if somebody's being shy.
Any opposed?
Any abstentions?
Seeing none.
Seeing none.
Good job.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I'm afraid I have to run, but Haritha, you're the vice chair. Would you mind continuing the meeting?
But can we get an announcement for the next book club?
Oh,
My
yes.
mom was-
It is on Facebook. The next book club meeting is May 18th, I
And
think.
what's this meeting, next meeting?
The book club?
No, this.
Where?
Oh.
Where would that be?
Okay, so for the book club, we would be meeting at Melina Rudman's house, and I can circulate the details. It's on Facebook, and I'll send out a mailer. Also, this next meeting, I don't know.
Fourth Thursday, always first.
Fourth Thursday.
Until
Fourth
Thanksgiving,
Thursday.
with the exception of Thanksgiving.
So May 25th.
May 25th. Thank you.
So next week.
Okay.
Got tripped up
Thank you,
this past
everybody.
week.
Thank you.
So we
And
will
Haritha,
discuss,
thanks.
right, upcoming events.
Baby. Scrambled eggs in the brain, I get it.
Appreciate it all.
That's my name.
All right.
Good to see you. Looking forward to
I think-
hearing the notes.
I think we did number 4 and 6, so we're on number 5. And we've already done number 6.
We are done with number
We're
6.
done with number 6, so we're on number 5.
5. This group counts. Do anyone have updates on the webpage? I don't have any updates on that.
The only thing I could add is that just 2 days ago, Derek was given access by Sustainable CT to the website section for Rocky Hill on Sustainable CT's website. I know in past meetings you guys have voted on approving the language that you've worked on together. We'll have to coordinate about how to get that information up for the public to see, more than just out of the minutes, but actually up on the website. We'll have to work on that. So I can reach out to Derek and see how we should proceed. I'll talk to IT too and see what we can do.
Okay. I think we covered the B, right? Access to the Sustainable City platform. I think Derek received it already.
Mm-hmm.
And we also touched upon the recycling and deep SMM grant, right, earlier with Matt.
Oh,
Yeah. So, bike discussions on bike routes. I think we touched upon that too, but anyone has anything to add on it?
Nothing really robust, other than to say that Rocky Hills Community Walk Bike Group is going to be displaying a bicycle at Bicycles on Main in Old Weathersfield. That's throughout the course of the month of May. And really, had I had it together, I would have suggested this group did the same. But, you know, these things come up and the deadline's here, and I caught wind of it, and I happen to have an old bike at home, which I'm going to display with really nothing more than some signage and some talking points about what Walk Bike Rocky Hill is standing for. Namely, the RAISE grant, which Senator Lesser touched on for Silas Team, and flagging the Putnam Bridge and the some smaller things, and perhaps because this is kind of a group that's outside of this task force, I'll also just FYI everybody, here's, you know me, I'll send out a picture of the bike and the signage. Kind of racing to get that done before the next couple days. Ed's going to use his pickup truck to bring the bike down there because the bike is operative, but it doesn't have any brakes. So we're not pedaling it down there. Plus, it's also a decorated thing. There's going to be all kinds of elements on there. Unless we want to spend, an hour talking about bike routes, I don't think I want to open the seal too much here.
Okay. Then we are done with 6. Going to the upcoming events. What do we have? Is it more-
This was my agenda point as well,
Okay,
and
yeah.
anybody need to hear for her perspective. Now, one of my harebrained schemes is to consider if it's feasible and if it's a good idea to bring Sustainable Rocky Hill into the organizing elements of the IFPG, which if you don't know, I think we all know, that's across the lawn here behind the library and the police department. My suggestion was that Lori Stanczyk's Human Resources Department, our task force, and the Cora Belden Library would be partnership in this effort. Again, working on the model of 3 governing aspects that can say, when spring planting day is this day, all in favor. Very kind of low-key board. I also want to stress this is not for this summer. I would think this would be a conversation to happen over the course of 2023 to perhaps propose for 2024 planting season. I have not seen the town work in great speed on anything, so I wouldn't suggest that this is something that comes before the town and gets implemented for efficient planting season 2023. So we talked about it. We all share some thoughts on it, and Nita might have 5 minutes to talk about it. My experience is that you all know that the access to food is harder than it can be. We'd like to know why that is. We also like to have a seat at the table to find out what's the best way to produce food and distribute it to people with food scarcity, period.
Just before I move on, this is like a tangentially related question. I was going to ask before we were going over the action plan. Does the town, I just I've gotten a lot of emails at my job. Do we have like a statement on school meals for all universal school meals in the school? I know we're not talking about the school system with this, but just thought I'd throw that out there.
It just came up. Is anybody at the town meeting when Carrie Wood presented? And she discussed some of that. That's coming from a state point of view. And I don't know what the town's position on it is.
Alan, what you're talking about seems to go under 10.4, develop and promote community growing spaces. And 10.1, encourage an equitable and just food system. Just sort of.
And I forgot to mention, at the lunch at Elizabeth's, sat across from Joseph, and he said, oh, by the way, did you all know one thing that Rocky Hill has done prior to this task force? Let me put it another way. This garden is funded by Connecticut CT, Sustainable CT, sorry. Funded or granted, but there's something there. In other words, it's almost as though it is in our purview. We just don't know it.
The compost bin, your son, Aditya's son,
Funding came from
Keith,
Sustainable CT.
There was some that we had to put in, and they matched
There you go.
the amount that we had put
The
in.
community
Do you,
match.
do you recall how much money that was?
I don't.
You can find out maybe or no?
Sure, I can.
Because that's
Yeah,
one of
you have a
the
notebook.
things that we need to discover. If you're suggesting that Sustainable Rocky Hill be a player in it, and in essence, we are with your presence or my presence, although I haven't been there
Well,
this
but
year.
as volunteers, though, we don't have an agency, or we're not decision makers.
Not yet, but it sounds like that's where you're going.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
So the Community Match Fund through Connecticut CT, Sustainable CT has given out $3 million in small grants to either citizens, nonprofits, or even town entities to try to do either small projects or complete large projects. They can match 1-to-1 up to $7,500. So that'd be $15,000 total outlay on a project. And then they said that if you wanted to focus on EV charging, there's an extra additional match, so it's like 1.5 times to 1 from Sustainable CT if they're anybody interested in EV charging issues.
Do we have to write a grant proposal to apply for that?
Apparently, it's a very simple process. You're not going to have, and this is quoting from the person I spoke to on the phone, it's not going to be this 60-page outlay of information that needs to be done. It's meant to try to promote, on the ground, progress towards different issues quickly and easily. So I think it's a very simplified process.
Is there an application form that you could send to this group, or?
I will find it because I just found out about it yesterday.
So if you're interested in the grant program, you want to email Joseph Dickerson from Sustainable CT. He is the gentleman, and I could send you,
Okay.
send that
Is his name on the
contact to you.
application, so when you see this application, it has to go to Joe Dickerson?
He's the person you're supposed to talk to, and if you ever have
Yeah.
questions about
But is
the
his name on
viability
there, or
of
I have to
possible-
ask you?
I'm not sure if it's on there or not.
Okay.
I'll
Well,
find it.
if you go to Sustainable CT, I'm sure you could find
Sustainable
Joseph
CT, I think,
Dickerson.
has like 7 or 8 people
and
on staff.
it's, hey, give me a call and talk to him on the phone. I talked to him about Center Cemetery in the past. And he just recently wrote Derek and myself to ask if we had,
Good.
ideas for funds.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think what I have gleaned from Human Services is that they have a lot on their plate. They're also dealing with a lot of the concierge stuff that's going on in town that all goes through. So I for all I know, Lori Stanzik is dying to have this thing off of her plate. I don't know that. But it seems as though there is I don't want to say leadership vacuum, because that's not really fair, but it seems as
Lack
though
of
it's a little
communication.
untethered. We're trying to plant 8 raised beds to feed people, and it doesn't seem to be a game plan, other than a couple of
My
How's Tuesday?
understanding from working with Lori is that her role, besides making it exist in the first place, which we're grateful for, is her primary involvement is with
Youth groups.
youth groups. So she organizes a youth planting day, a once a week youth harvesting group later in the summer, and occasionally rounds up volunteers. Everything else having to do with the garden is done strictly by volunteers, several of whom are at this table, including keeping the compost system running, deciding what to plant, planting it, buying the seeds, buying the plants, watering, heaven help us, weeding, mulching, the whole.
Buying the seeds, you said, so the
Yeah, we
financial output.
we get paid back.
Oh.
And it's
Okay,
also-
but deciding what to get and going out and getting them is on
I
the
see.
volunteers. However, as Alan said, the volunteers don't really seem to have a voice in the larger system, and the human youth services aspect is just one small piece of that. And Lori has also been helpful as a go-between between other city departments, like parks departments, but even that communication has been rather lumpy and has sometimes led to wasted effort and damage. Not just useless things, but things being done that are actually harmful to the continued running of the garden, and other people, volunteers, have to come in and undo the damage.
There's been big things, but there's also been sort of low-key things like leaves that are collected at the end of the fall are hauled away when we have a compost bin that needs browns. This is
And we
truly,
asked to
it's
have
like,
them left,
we need
and
the
it
leaves,
didn't
and the
happen.
leaves are vacuumed up and off they go. It's like, well, who's taking the leaves? It's a compost bin, and that's like part B to the whole
Communication.
system.
We need.
So we're not gonna go line by line with all the issues here, but I think
But
just broadly.
you can't have communication if you don't have a format for that communication. Right now, we have email and text groups that's basically the volunteers and sometimes some potential volunteers. But there's no format for communication to say, let's all the interested parties get together and decide. If we're going to fence the garden, yes, how big will the fence and when will it go up? Rather than different groups at different times having different ideas about where the fence will be and when it will go up. Then it goes up and the people garden say, I can't get a wheelbarrow through that gate you put in. right? So the people actively doing the garden need to be a part of this because it prevents wasted effort. But you know, again, communication right now is very free and easy, and it just depends on who's around at any given time, and then things happen without other people knowing about them. And it's just a lot of wasted effort towards some really wonderful goals.
I mean, the
that-
spirit of the
that
place is
garden-
really.
So my
Fire.
suggestion was that
Sure.
I've been, sorry, did I
No,
cut you? Yeah,
no, no.
so
Go ahead.
which I've been pushing since last year is that there has to be one lead person. Again, so we're not trying to create a hierarchy or something, but there has to be one person who's the coordinator of all of that, what you mentioned.
My suggestion from a lot of church committees is 2 co-chairs. Because if one person gets sick or goes on vacation or whatever,
Check it.
plus 2 co-chairs can check in with each other and say, I think we're having this issue. And when I've been co-chair of like one of our church-based committees, it has been brilliant and it has reduced the stress. You know, if there's meetings, one of the 2 of us needs to always be there, but we don't both have to always be there. It reduces the stress, and it also gives us a way to bounce ideas off of each other without throwing everything out to the whole group, which can impede forward progress. But if you have one person, then sometimes that person is carrying too much weight. Sometimes that one person has certain ideas, which if they bounce them off of someone else, they say, maybe not. But the 2 people together make a whole brain. So I'd like to suggest that we consider that possibility.
We probably can't go on this forever.
I will never be a chair of anything again, but I will be happily a co-chair.
I have a quick
All
question
kinds of
for you
things.
just before we move on. Just what is the organizational structure for the food pantry garden? Like, do you all have a record keeping system?
No,
Okay,
no,
so
there's
I'm just saying,
nothing.
'cause-
There's Zippo.
Because all I'm just trying to see is, if something is already loosely organized
No.
based on people's
No.
volunteerism and time, to
No.
maybe then get a leader or coordinator might be harder than to have a live document that lets people know, okay, it was watered this date. Then now we got to follow up. Okay, Jim did it last week. Now someone's got to do it this week. Okay, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? Something
That-
like that.
We
Having
actually
a-
did create something last year,
Yeah.
remember? Yes.
Well, I mean, then it comes to kind of the onus is on Ed, because he did it in 2022, suddenly he's going to do it again. But no, his priorities change from year to year, or he wants to be a chair one summer but not the next. And I think there's a floating, which is why I suggest the library has a role here, because A, their staff, and B, they're adjacent, and they seem to at least have some interest in the
They
subject.
can have some activities too for their
Correct, they
kids,
can start to
right?
activate that space
Yeah.
by having activities already,
Yeah.
teaching kids how to do
Pumpkin
planting.
smash.
Pumpkin smash. and
Also
whatnot.
because the library has composted in the past. Their rotating barrel system is broken, so they've been sending people across the field over to us. I did a composting program at the library with quite a sizable number of people, as several of you know. And we'll probably do another. It'll
Libraries
probably be a repeating thing. But they're just a resource for information, and they have people, Lindsay and others, who are interested in partnering with the community. And that's the kind of attitude that we want, because this is a multifunctional garden. It feeds people, it composts waste, it provides opportunities for volunteers, it provides opportunities for community gatherings.
Outdoor fitness.
And all of these things are important, and right now Lori's role as Youth and Human Services is very focused on one aspect, and we really need input from the other aspects to make it work smoothly. And, record keeping from year to year is a brilliant thing, and unless someone says, oh, I printed out Ed's PowerPoint of the garden plan, and then we need the end of year, what we intended to do, what we actually did, what worked and what didn't work. I have a literal back of scrap paper map of the garden from the year before, and that, as far as I know, is the entire record of what was planted where 2 years ago. So
Excuse me, I have a 7 o'clock meeting.
So
I
we,
have to.
we
So-
taken action, the task force taken action on that?
Records, so thank you, Robert, for bringing that up.
I don't, have you ever tried to get like the schools involved, like talk to Board of Ed? Because I could see, like, you know, if there are like, what, how many, like, you know, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade up classes are there? You know, like, you know, like Mrs. Yacobucci's class, Mrs. Smith's class. And, you know, like,
Yeah.
you could have like a week of X class goes to the garden. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, there are, you know, I love Boy Scout troops. I know there are a lot of existing volunteer.
Some of those actually are happening. We've had Boy Scouts come and plant, but
Yeah.
again, just to give a tiny illustrative vignette of why better communication is needed. Lori organized a group of Boy Scouts to come and plant, I think it was 2 years ago before Ed was actively involved. And they came and amongst other things, planted herb plants. The following year, I and the other volunteer, there were basically 2 of us doing the garden during the pandemic, is what it boils down to, got a grouchy email from Lori saying the volunteers are not to be picking the herbs from the garden because the Boy Scouts came back and wanted to know what happened to the basil they planted last year and it's not there. Anyone here garden? What happens to basil when it freezes? Very good. So there was an opportunity to educate, to teach the Boy Scouts the difference between annual, biennial, perennial. In fact, what happened was because the person organizing the Boy Scouts was not any kind of gardener at all, was that this opportunity to learn was missed. It very nearly lost those 2 volunteers forever. And in fact, there was no problem at all. And if there'd been a little more communication, it would have been an opportunity instead of a minus. So, you know, again, we need more than just that one input.
So it sounds to me like we can discuss this for
Yeah.
another couple of
Yeah,
hours.
I'm done.
But we're missing some other
Next
pieces.
steps.
It sounds like Alan has suggested, and I don't know where you want to go with this, Alan, in regards to sustainable Rocky Hill being part of that. Do you-
I'd like to see it on the agenda again next week, even if we just touch it and move on, because this is not a 2023 resolution.
So is it something that you would like Lori to be seated here to have the discussion
I
with?
think we all want to be on the same page. Maybe one day we'll have an action move to approve the interest of being involved with the garden, and then it's approved.
So just to have this on the agenda then
Agenda
for
for
next.
next-
I think so. I think this is just a touchstone, just
Okay.
to say this
Yeah.
is an interesting
And I
thing.
appreciate
I've
answering
not
my questions.
approached the library about this, for the record. This is my crazy idea. They don't know that I just wrote them into this. They might say, great idea, but no, we don't have bandwidth.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's important, I know we can always keep saying timeless, the reason that I just don't know about it, but also I think, you know, if we want to do like what am I trying to say, agriculture education and outdoor education at Straska Farm, and that's an idea, you know, this is kind of our model, so that's why I just, yeah.
A pilot project.
You know, not to mention, that's the,
Yeah.
what do you call that, west
Well,
approach?
this-
That's the west
thi-
side, this is the,
East
this is
side.
a little one over here, and there's a big one over
Right.
there. There's no reason why this can't be.
This, though, is not a community garden.
The
And that
Straska-
Straska is supposed to be set up, is going to be set up as a community garden, but this is specifically for the food pantry garden.
Okay.
So it's a little different, but I think a lot of similarities, yeah.
We can take many things from
Yeah.
here and implement it.
Yeah, that's why your point about record keeping was well taken, because we can say, here are some best practices. Here are some things we tried that worked well. Here's some things that we tried that didn't work very well. So we can share the results of those. Simon's brilliant idea of planting 3 foot of radishes every week or 10 days for the entire growing season. And we did that last year, even though you weren't able to be around a lot, and it was brilliant. This simple structure worked, and if we can
We table
share.
it for next time,
Yes.
for the next.
Yeah.
We'll just
So we're tabled.
keep it on the next agenda.
Having too much fun.
So the next one is the Earth Day. So, I mean, do we want to do any activities from the Sustainable City for the Earth Day? I know we passed it, it's April 22nd, but maybe having something in the food pantry, right, where we turn the composting and make it as
That's
like
a really great idea. I'm glad you suggested it.
Yes.
so maybe we
Because it's all in
plan
the
something.
same vein
It all,
as
yeah, it all
the-
ties together. something for us to plan
It
on.
would be a way of getting a sort of, we're also getting sort of a foothold into that garden. It's not supposed to be like a dramatic coup or anything. It's just that I think that we all have great interest. That we all, in fact, met at that garden with the exception of Robert. That's how I know all of you. It was from one
So we-
100 square foot
So
plot.
maybe we discuss offline on this and come up with a date. Will that work, Jason?
Yeah, of course.
I think we talked about SRH book club already, the date.
Mhm.
So the presentation of bike route findings to the town, did this already happen?
No.
Do we have, okay, so we just take it for the next meeting?
Yes.
It's defaulted. That's
So we will move it to the next agenda.
That's almost like updates, letter D. It's almost the same thing. Right?
Yeah. So we also made an announcement on the next.
The 25th.
25th of May.
You're not an
Okay, any other topics? I think we covered everything in the agenda.
Good.
Who was the name of the first member of the public that showed up?
Oh.
Mary Beth?
Mary Beth. She was
Mary
like
Beth
Susan from-
Maluccio.
Mary Beth from the gut.
Maluccio, just like it sounds there.
Mary Beth's
Oh, I
one,
read that.
one name or two names?
Rocky
Two.
Blue guest.
Yeah, capital B.
So
It's been a long day.
This one might have-
if nothing to discuss, we adjourn.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
Yeah, we're adjourning.
All in favor?
All
Yes, they-
all in favor?